this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Marvin. Though it wasn't actually a question, it was a comment. And it was a comment made in reaction to my recent vlog on the subject of time magic. And Marvin tells us that he has used Reiki through time with mixed results, and that his fear with time magic would be creating an alternate timeline. And my answer to this is that this is a perfectly reasonable fear that most people would encounter. However, my understanding is that we create alternate timelines all the time. It's not actually an unusual thing. My understanding of time is that it's not a single straight line, but thousands of different lines that come from many different junctures. If you think of it in much the same way that I would explain the soul, it is like a tree branch. It starts from a single place, but it splits and forks and branches in all different directions over the course of existence, and ultimately is very complex. When we do time magic, in fact, when we do many different kinds of magic, quite often what we're doing is surfing between different probabilities, some of which already exist and some of which we're creating at the time. And there's a school of thought that I think perhaps slightly overstates it, but not much, that any time you are presented with a decision, one aspect of your soul will take each possible path that could come from it in order to gain all of the lessons that could be had. Now, I personally think that that's only the case in decisions that have something to do with your soul's lessons, but nonetheless, the idea is one I still agree with. And I would say to you that you already exist in many, many, many different timelines. And there are techniques of meditation for looking into these. Sometimes we also see them in dreams. And it's completely possible to pass from one to another in a conscious manner. And we talk about this in my third degree book. But most commonly people do it in an unconscious manner. And when people do this, and they do it all the time, usually their brain will gloss it over in such a way that they never notice. But occasionally they will notice, and most often they'll dismiss it as being their imagination, or they'll come up with some explanation for it, or if they can't explain it, they'll just say, well, I don't get that. But once you know this happens, you see it a lot more often. And again, most commonly we've not done it intentionally, but if you watch for it, you can see when you've done it. And you can learn to do it intentionally. I think it's something that should be done with care, and it is a very reasonable concern to be very careful of what timeline you're crossing into. Or I suppose we should say what timeline your point of consciousness is crossing into, because you're already in all of these different timelines. It's just a matter of where your current consciousness is looking. And so I would say that while this is a legitimate concern, it's not actually an unusual thing to happen. And manipulating timelines, moving between timelines, understanding that there are timelines, I think is actually a very important thing. These are also called probabilities, probable lives. There are a number of different terms for them. It's not really an unusual concept, but it is one that takes a certain amount of work to understand and a lot more work to be able to actually interact with. So, although I think it's a very reasonable concern to be worried about what timelines you might be creating, do not think that you're not creating them simply because you're not consciously aware of it. We create them all the time. Therefore, certainly concern and caution is reasonable and desirable, but don't think you're not creating alternate timelines just because you're not consciously aware of it. So those would be my thoughts on the subject. I hope you find them interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Reverend Don, super omnibus of incantations and invocations for all occasions. Marianne Kay and I created this massive compendium of magic and artwork for you to use in any way that you would like. There are literally hundreds of spells and hundreds of illustrations, which can be mixed and matched and used in many different ways. Check it out now at witchghoulstore.com.